Shabbat, Tov leodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'Shemcha Elyon, ulezamer l'Shemcha Elyon. Mizmor shir leyom HaShabbat, Tov leodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'Shemcha Elyon, ulezamer l'Shemcha Elyon. להגיד בבוקר הצלחה, ואמונתך
Shabbat Shalom, a very warm welcome. Before we formally welcome you, we're going to invite the angels into our sanctuary with Shalom Aleichem, and for that we're going to be joined by Judith Silver from her home, not very far away from us, just in Watford. And do feel free to let us know that you're watching by posting lots of wonderful comments in the chat. But first we go for Shalom Aleichem to Judith.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hashem, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu. Ruachem leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon. Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Thank you to Judith for leading us so beautifully into this service. And those who are regular watchers of the Ark Synagogue Kabbalat Shabbat service will be a little surprised. Looks a little different on the bimah today. Rabbi Aaron has a weekend off, and I'm joined here by Rabbi Mark Solomon. It's really a pleasure to welcome him into the sanctuary. It's not accidental that we're welcoming Rabbi Mark this evening, but we've just had a wonderful week-long conference, Jewish, Christian, Muslim conference, normally taking place in Wallenda in Germany, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, we haven't been able to meet. So we've been meeting all around the world, and I believe we're joined tonight by 50 people from Tanzania. I'm not sure if the 25 people who are in Indonesia participating at the conference will be able to join us live. It's very late there, so they might be watching us on catch-up. But it is wonderful to welcome everyone, all the participants of JCM conference. It's lovely to see all the comments, but of course, also really wonderful to welcome all our regulars of our synagogue. It's wonderful. I had 1 week off, so it's wonderful to be back in the sanctuary, even though it's a bit cold here. And you're posting so quickly, I can't even read all the comments as quickly as you're posting. We'll be joined by other guests. Judith will be coming back. We'll be joined by guests from around the world, or at least around Europe. But before that, we invite you all to light candles we invite you to bring this sanctuary into your home and bring Shabbat into your home. So do light the candles with us and then join in the blessing. And you can tell our conference is trilingual, well, actually bilingual, German-English, but the service will have German, English, and Hebrew with transliteration for those who don't yet read the Hebrew so well. So we invite you to join us in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav vetzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue now with Psalm 96. Sing to the Eternal One a new song, and it feels like a new song for me this evening. It's the first time since last March that I've been inside a synagogue, so it's a very special joy to be here with Rabbi Leah and also with all of you. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, b'chol ha'amim niflaotav, ki gadol Adonai. ומולל מאוד נוראהו על כל אלוהים כי כל אלוהי עמים אלילים ואדוני שמיים עשה עוד והדר לפניו עוז ותפארת במקדשו הבו לאדוני משפחות עמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, שאו מנחה, ובואו לחצרותיו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ. אמרו בגויים, אדוני מלך, אף תיכון תבל בל תימות. ידין עמים במישרים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ. ירם הים ומלואו יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו אז ירננו כל הצייר לפני אדוני כי יבא לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, וימים באמונתו. ילאי, ללאי, לאי, ילאי, ללאי, איי, 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 איי,
And for Psalm 98, we go to Germany to Rabbi Esther.
Singt für Gott ein neues Lied, denn Gott tat staunenswerte Taten. Gottes rechte Hand hat dabei geholfen und Gottes heiliger Arm. Gott hat seine Hilfe bekannt gemacht und Gottes gerechtes Wirken ist offenbart vor den Augen der Völker. Gott dachte an die Huld und an die Treue zur Familie Israels. Alle Enden der Erde sahen die Hilfe unseres Gottes. Jauchzet vor Gott alle Länder der Erde. Freut euch und singt. Spielt für Gott auf der Harfe und mit lautem Gesang. Mit Trompeten und dem Ton des Schofar macht Musik für Gott. Gott regiert die Welt. Das Meer soll brausen und alles, was es erfüllt. Die Erde und die auf ihr wohnen. Die Ströme sollen in die Hände klatschen, die Berge sollen jubeln im Chor vor Gott. Denn Gott kommt, um die Erde zu richten. Gott richtet den Erdkreis gerecht.
continue welcoming Shabbat with the mystical hymn Lecha Dodi. Come, my friend, to greet the bride. Shabbat is the mystical bride, the feminine aspect of the divine, which nurtures us and which gives us our rest. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Ishme'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad, Ushmo echad, L'shemo l'tiferet v'lithilah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha, ki hi mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesocha, sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Hittoreri, hittoreri, ki va'orech kumi ori, 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 shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Bo'e v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabala.
How wonderful it is to welcome the Sabbath bride into our midst and to welcome so many of you. And it's lovely through the chat. We know that we are joined by some of our JCM regulars who weren't able to be with us. So an extra special shout out to Karl, who's joining us from Aachen, normally always with us in Fallenda, but wasn't able to be with us this year. But we go back to Judith for Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat, a psalm for the day of Shabbat.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. Shechenu Ismo Shir Leyom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot LaAdonai ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון כי שמחתני אדוני בפועלך במעשה ידיך ארנן מה גדלו מעשיך טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון.
You might not have heard us singing in harmonies with Judith, but we know that you were all singing in harmonies, just like we were singing in harmony with Judith. And we now are at our Baruch Hu, at our call to prayer. If you feel comfortable standing, I invite you to stand with us. La 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach seated again as we go to my parents' home for the Ma'ariv Aravim.
Gepriesen seist du, ewiger unser Gott, du regierst die Welt, du lässt es durch dein Wort Abend werden, du führst die Dämmerung herbei und lässt voller Einsicht die Augenblicke verstreichen und die Zeit voranschreiten. Gemäß deines Wohlgefallens erscheinen am Himmel die Sterne in ihren Sternbildern.
Schöpfer von Tag und Nacht, du lässt das Licht von der Finsternis weichen und die Finsternis vor dem Licht. Du lässt den Tag vorübergehen und führst die Nacht herbei. Du trennst den Tag von der Nacht. Schöpfer aller Geschöpfe, das ist dein Name. Gepriesen seist du, Ewiger, du lässt es Abend werden.
Something happened? Ahavat olam bet Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו משוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה, נגד יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב את עמו ישראל, אוהב את עמו ישראל. So we move to the Shimmer, and there are many familiar tunes to the Shimmer, and I would love to introduce a new tune to you, a tune that I composed a few years ago. I was inspired by thinking about the text and different ways of interpreting and thinking about it. So my invitation to you is to sing this line with me, and I'll sing some other things and then come back to this line. It goes like this. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So we rise in steps with every line moving. You can think of it as moving towards God, towards heaven. Let's do one more. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. We sing the same tune for this second part, but very quietly. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. So you can sing that at the same time as the poem, or you can simply listen as the text is asking us to do. Listen, humans who wrestle with God, there is a power greater than any of us, and that power is one. Our lives, languages, colors and creeds, the clothes we wear and the books we read, they're as different as any of us, yet the truth we seek is one. meant to wrestle with God, joining our hands in love, joining our voices in song, to give thanks and praise to one. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone, eternal one, are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You have freed us from oppressors and delivered us from tyrants. You led us out of Egypt forever to serve you in freedom. When we witnessed your power, we praised your name and gave thanks. Willingly we accepted your rule. Then full of joy, we sang together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילו עושה פלא, נור אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
And it has been said, the Eternal One has delivered Jacob and redeemed us from the hand of one stronger than ourselves. We praise you, O God, Redeemer of Israel. I think, Rabbi Mark, you ought to introduce the next reading. We're going to hear it read in English, but I think maybe you want to say a few words about it because you wrote this version.
In liberal Judaism, we are revising our liturgy and introducing in some prayers in the Hebrew, speaking of God in the feminine grammatical gender instead of the masculine. And so that's what happens in this prayer, Hashkevinu, Shekhinah Nechamatenu, using the Hebrew feminine forms and speaking of God not as the Lord up there, but Shekhinah, as the indwelling presence within us, giving us life and nurturing us. And in this new translation of Hashkevinu, I tried to capture the idea of how we feel when we're looking forward to a good night's sleep, because this is a prayer for a good night and for rest and for safety. And so I tried to envision it as God, so to speak, tucking us in for the night.
When we lie down, source of comfort, let us find true rest, and refresh us, source of help, to rise once more and live. Spread over us your coverlet of peace. Turn our thoughts to brighter paths, and strengthen body and spirit for your goodness. Let us find in you our shield to guard ourselves from enmity, sickness, violence, want, and sadness, and help us shun corruption and wrongdoing. May your soft wings envelop us, so we repose in you as in a mother's womb, protective, nourishing, warm, and compassionate. May our sense of your care enliven us and calm us in all our comings and goings, tonight and always. Blessed are you, divine presence, as you spread your coverlet of peace over us and over all who dwell on earth.
ושמעו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
We turn to the Amidah, the central prayer of the evening service, and begin by asking God to help us open our mouths, help us feel the words of prayer that we say. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah. אל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. You are holy, awesome is your name. We have no God but you. We praise you, Eternal One, the Holy God. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu, retzevi menuchateinu. Kaddishenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha. Sabeinu mitzovecha, v'samcheinu b'shuatecha. V'tzahel libeinu, le'ovdecha be'emet. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון. שבת קודשך, שבת קודשך. וינוחו וישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת.
May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight, eternal God. Be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept their prayers. And in this beginning of a new month, of the month of Adar, and also a new Chinese year, we insert the special prayer for the new moon. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, ya'aleh ve'yavo v'yizacher zichronenu ve'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha, letova ve'livracha, lechayim u'leshalom, ביום ראש החודש הזה. זוכרנו אדוני אלוהינו בו לטובה.
אמן.
ופוקדנו בו לברכה.
אמן.
והושיענו בו לחיים.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני, שאותך לבדך, בירא נעבוד. And we read together. מודים אנחנו לך, שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו, מגן אישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך, על חיינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך. ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות.
שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. כי אתה הוא מלך הדור בכל השלום. כי אתה הוא מלך הדור בכל השלום. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
In a couple of minutes, after Judith has led us in Oseh Shalom, we're going to turn to Misha Berach, to praying for those who are ill, in body, mind or spirit. And it's an opportunity for everybody, if you would like to type in the chat or as a comment the name of somebody you are thinking of at this time, somebody who is ill. We think of so many people with COVID and other illnesses. And so if you'd like to add those to your comments, we can look at those names and perhaps read them out before we turn to the prayer for the ill.
Oseh shalom b'ma'amah, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol bnei Adam. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol bnei Adam. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom כל בני האדם.
The prayer at this stage in the service is for those who are ill, for sick people. And we have had some names mentioned in the chat here: Rabbi Howard Berman, Alan Harris, Roy Haddon, Joe Lees, Kuram Hassan, Nusrat Alam, Tasnim Alam, Jonas Frankel, and Miriam Marmerstein. In my Leicester community, we pray for David Shine, and in Edinburgh for Alexander Brodie. And you can still add names, even as we now turn to Misha Berach. Halima Krausen and I, in the course of this past week in the JCM, have led a project group looking at prayers for the sick in Jewish and Muslim tradition, and we've shared together many prayers, traditional and modern, from different strands of our Jewish and Muslim traditions. And on Thursday, yesterday, I shared with the group this prayer, Misha Berach, written and composed by the late Debbie Friedman, whose 10th Yortzeit, whose 10th anniversary of her death, fell just a week ago. And she wrote this many, many years ago, and it has become a much loved prayer that is shared for those who are ill and for strength for all of us to get through this time of COVID, to safeguard our mental and emotional health, and to help to safeguard everybody's health by following the rules. And let's hope by getting our vaccinations soon. I just booked mine for next Tuesday today. And we also have Joan Hyman and Hamza amongst those we're praying for tonight. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And let us say, Amen.
It's our privilege now to invite Rabbi Michael Hilton into this sanctuary, who will be delivering the sermon for this evening.
Thank you, Leah. Shabbat Shalom lekulam, Chodesh Tov, a guten Shabbos, a guten Chodesh, Sein zufrieden es Adar, a good Sabbath, a good month, be happy, it's Adar. The theme for the 48th International Conference for Dialogue between Jews, Christians and Muslims is religion in times of COVID-19. On Sunday, February the 23rd last year, as last year's conference ended, I left the centre after lunch to walk to the station in Valendar. As I walked down the main road, Westerwaldstrasse, I could see a carnival procession wending its way slowly up the parallel street to my right, and I wondered how I was going to get across their path to reach the station. Fortunately, by the time I got down towards the River Rhine and needed to turn right, the procession had passed. I stayed that night in Bonn, and the following morning on the way to Cologne, the train was packed with carnival revellers in fancy dress. I got into conversation with one of them, explained I was from England, and asked what it was all about. He replied that it was carnival time and they were all out to have fun. So I asked him how it started and what was the reason for carnival, but he said that he didn't know, just that it was a really big event. When we got to Cologne station, there were thousands of revellers getting off the trains for their day out, and I remember wondering if any of them had COVID-19 and thinking that it could spread fast in such a big crowd. Exactly 2 weeks later, on March the 9th, 2020, I was in synagogue for the Purim festivities, wearing my own fancy dress. The carnival atmosphere, the plays and parodies we have at Purim was strongly influenced by the big Lenten carnivals in Germany and Italy. At one time, Jews were prohibited from taking part in the public celebrations, or even in some places made to take part and humiliated. With the festival of Purim taking place in most years at the full moon a couple of weeks after the start of Lent, Jewish communities across Europe decided to make their own masquerades and plays, the Purim Spiel. Last year, my synagogue, Kol Hai, was crowded, and there was by then a lot of talk of a lockdown. I was quite worried, I remember well, about shaking hands with people, and I kept well clear of the finger food in communal dishes. I ate a couple of tangerines I could peel myself. I don't think anyone caught COVID-19 in my synagogue that night, but unfortunately they did at a lot of others in London at Purim last year, and some of them died. By April, many of my colleagues had 2 or 3 times as many funerals to lead as usual. Our celebration of Purim in person in 2020 was a disaster for the London Jewish community. Over the last year, 1 in 400 of the total Jewish population of Britain has died of COVID, a rate 50% higher than the overall figure for the UK, and the UK has had one of the highest death rates in the world, which has only just started to come down. So far, we've had 4 million infected out of our population of 66 million, and 115,000 deaths. And since I came home from that trip to JCM last year, I haven't left London except for a few nearby country walks in the summer. And since that Purim last year, I haven't entered a synagogue. It's hard to grasp when we tell each other our own stories that this disease affects nearly every country in the world. There's every hope of a lot of progress this year in overcoming the pandemic, but how traumatized will the world be afterwards? Will exhausted politicians make more mistakes? Will there be recriminations, arguments, or even, God forbid, war? In the first wave, there was such a sense of community and solidarity. But now we even have a few fools demonstrating outside hospitals and trying to stop exhausted doctors and nurses getting to work because somehow they've been convinced that the virus is a hoax. There are little cracks showing in our solidarity, and we fear that they may get wider. One of the great things about JCM in recent years is how it's become worldwide. Not only that, but our friends from Tanzania, from Indonesia, and from Israel who've joined us during the week are already involved in dialogue groups exploring faith and culture in their own countries. Just from our contacts with each other over the past few days, we can witness for ourselves how dialogue can build togetherness and trust between diverse people zooming in from many time zones and climates, aware of our differences, but inspired by how much we share as Jews, Christians, and Muslims in a pandemic which affects us all. In Britain and Germany, during the most recent lockdowns, places of worship have been allowed to remain open, though many have closed voluntarily. And I've heard that this concession is not really because politicians and governments consider faith groups so essential that they have to meet in person, but much more because nearly all our faith groups have been very good at sticking to the rules, making sure hands are sanitized and social distance is observed. As people of faith, we commit ourselves to preserve our own health and to reach out and to help others. Each week we have a particular section of the Torah, and this week it's the same as the one for JCM last year, Mishpatim. It's a very diverse collection of rules and laws, and twice in the short section it bids us take care of strangers in Exodus 22:20 and 23:9, which reads, "V'ger lo tilchatz, va'atem yadatem et nefesh hager, ki yerim chayitem, be'eretz Mitzrayim." Do not oppress a stranger, for you know the soul of a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You were strangers in the land of Egypt. This reason is so repeatedly given for being kind to the stranger, the immigrant to your land. It's a reason that surely indicates empathy. A people who remembers slavery will naturally want to be careful how to treat new arrivals. But I once heard a very different explanation. It may be that a people once oppressed themselves might be more likely to oppress others, were it not for God's explicit command. For trauma and abuse can be passed on through the generations. This explanation feels like a warning for our own time, when the pandemic places our universal values under threat. Will all countries get equal access to effective vaccines and good treatment? Will our health crisis be followed by a moral crisis? And how can we deal with the fact that even in our wealthier countries, the pandemic makes existing inequalities worse, so that those with the least seem to get less, and those with the most seem to get more? This verse from the Torah, which I have quoted, gives a second reason not to oppress the stranger, not only because of Egypt, but because we identify with the stranger. We know his soul. The Hebrew word is nephesh. It's a very common feminine noun in the Bible. Just as the Arabic equivalent nafs is common in the Quran. To know someone's nephesh, or nafs, is to know them as we know ourselves. And this is what our dialogue at its best can give us. Not just a superficial understanding of each other, but to know the very essence, the soul of each other, what really motivates us from inside. And this, I think, is the message from this week's reading for this year of pandemic. That our faith journeys together can increase understanding and uplift us. And our newfound togetherness across the world can make this very moment into a moment of healing, as we've heard in our prayers, a path through the wilderness, a sense of solidarity in our pain and grief and mourning, and a blueprint for our times. In our JCM poetry group yesterday, we had a look at the poem recited at President Biden's inauguration, The Hill We Climb, by Amanda Gorman. "We will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one," she proclaimed. "For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.
Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov to you as well, Michael. Thank you so much for these wonderful words. We are going to turn now to our concluding prayers, as there's always a little bit of a delay in the chat until we get your messages. If we can already invite you to share names for Kaddish, people who have died recently or whose anniversary of their death you're marking. If you wish to share those names in the chat now, then please do so, as we invite you to rise for Aleinu, one of our closing prayers.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לאחד את שמו, וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
And please do keep posting names in the chat, and we will come to them in just a moment. As we turn to the Kaddish, we think of those whose yahrzeit falls at this time, those who are remembered by our community. Denise Jones Simonis, the mother of Hazel Kahn. Isabel Wood, the mother of Conrad, the mother of Jane Goe, and Conrad Anderson, the brother of Jane Goe. Sorry about that. Lionel Seymour, father of Anthony, and Tessa Essex, father-in-law of Linda. Marjorie Kettle, mother of John. Minnie Morris, the mother of Marsha Myers. Sadie Spire, the grandmother of Richard Collin. We are saddened by the recent death of Rosita Rosenberg, one of the leading figures within liberal Judaism for so many decades. And Paul Casto, just notified us of the death of his cousin Miriam. We also think of Melanie Uhle-Jäger, remembered by Carl Goldstein, and Tanya Hussein is remembering Hamda Hassan, Ifat Mukhtar, Elizabeth Barrera Mahbub, and Rukia is remembering Hussein Ish. Stefan is remembering his brother Martin. Michael is remembering Sheila Wigglesworth. Gail is remembering Edith Henderson, who would have been 100 tomorrow. Beverly is remembering Robert Russell. Mirko is remembering Melly, who died of cancer. Jane is remembering her friend Jennifer, who died last year. And Tammy is remembering also Mim, who died of COVID last night. And Kubra is remembering her grandmother, Hosna. Zichronam livracha. May their memory be a source of blessing. And I don't know if you had names to add. I'm sorry, Mark.
You can mention Diane Waterman, Mike Valencia, Ben Abeles, Denise Ben, and Howard Gross.
So we recite together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, B'alma divrach yirotei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayachon u'v'yomachon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, B'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal v'shmei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiran balma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei Adam v'imru Amen. May the Most High source of perfect peace grant peace to us, to all Israel, to all humanity, and let us say, Amen. And we are going to conclude in a moment with Adon Olam. Rabbi Mark has presented me with a challenge, so if I mess it up completely, it's only my fault. It's not Rabbi Mark's fault if I ruin the beautiful melody, but I do hope that you all enjoy it, and I hope that you join in. Maybe Rabbi Aaron and I can learn it after this service, and then we can sing it again if the congregation likes it. Thank you so much to everyone for joining in. It's been wonderful to welcome so many wonderful guests into our sanctuary. We will be joining together for Kiddush. Those who've been attending the JCM conference, please just go to the normal Zoom link that you already know well. If you are a regular member of the Ark Synagogue, you have a choice. You can either go to our regular Zoom link for Kiddush, and our synagogue chair, Leslie Moss, will be leading the Kiddush on our regular Zoom ID, or you can join us. The ID will show at the end slide, also with the Jewish Christian Muslim conference, and you can just come and join our celebration there. So the choice is yours, but first of all, we're going to sing together Adon Olam.
The composer of this Adon Olam was Sholom Sekunda, who is most famous perhaps for By Mir Bist Du Shein, for those who know that famous song. And it's so nice to be able to sing it because it needs two people at least, and I hope you'll all enjoy joining in, perhaps initially with Leah's part, Olam Olam, and some of you will know it, and we'll have fun singing it together. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra le'et nasa b'chetzo kol azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra Adon Olam, 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 Asher Malach, 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 B'terem Kol, Yetzir Nivra. Ve'acharei kichlot hakol, Levado yimloch nora, והוא היה, והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה. אדון עולם, אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. אדון עולם, 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 אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו, להחבירה, בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה. אדון עולם, אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. אדון עולם, 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 אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. והוא אלי וחי גולי, וצור חבלי בעת צרה. והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא. אדון עולם, אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. אדון עולם, 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 אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. בידו הפקיד רוחי, בעת אישן ויעירה. ויהי רוחי גוויעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. אדון עולם, אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא. אדון עולם, 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 אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא.
Now we really need a good cheer, but we're just going to have to imagine that you all cheered at home. We wish you Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to seeing you at Kiddush in the Zoom rooms, whether it's on our regular Kiddush Zoom or with us in JCM in the JCM Kiddush. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.
Not up to us to finish the job, but we must not stand idle. Not up to us to finish the job, but we must not stand idle. Not up to us to finish the job, but we must not stand idle. לא עלינו המלאכה לגמור.